Shalom Aleichem. Hello. Today we have a sefer, an old sefer of Harav Issachar Abarvanel. He was one of the great line of Spanish Jewry and a great Rav. And we have some biographical readings about him we can look at in a moment. Let's take a look at what we have. Okay. Here, this is Mifalot Elokim, Sefer Mifalot Elokim, the works of Hashem, Lahasar B'Yisrael, the great prince in Yisrael, Gadol Shemo, his name is great, Meir Einei Chachamim, he lit up the eyes of the Chachamim, the wise people, b'Toraso, in his Torah, b'Chachmaso, and his Chachma, his wisdom, Mikol b'nei Kedem, from all of the people that were before him. He distilled it and he wrote about it. V'tamo and v'nimuko imo hechacham hashalem hakolel. V'nikra shemo b'Yisrael, his name is called in Israel, Don Yitzchak Abarvanel, Zecher Tzaddik v'kadosh Levracha. Nimtzos Sapir Gezeras HaSefer Haloz Bebeis HaAlof Marina Rabbeinu Menachem Ezra Mifano Yud Sadik Vov. So this sefer was found in the Rav Menachem Azariah Mifano of a Beis HaNasi V'Nelam L'Shem with the Tehillah Hanavon Don Shmuel Parnasim Yud Sadik Vov, and it was also in the great Rav Don Shmuel Parnasim. Tovim Hashnayim Minu Echad. Two are better than one. V'nasan Madfis was given to the printer, La Hadfiso to print it. V'hoga be'iyun Rav Im Shnei Ha'atakaos Hanizkar, and they were looking at the two old manuscripts. Hanizkar al Yedei Ho'ish Chayil Rav Pa'alim, the great person with a lot of good works that he did. Hachacham Ha'olaf Marino Rabbeinu Rab Yitzchak Gershon, Yud Zayin Yud Aleph Eperion Ephrion Nemtaya Lama Chezecher Laor HaSefer Zed. So they got this sefer to print. B'tzvus Shel HaRabani Marino Rabbeinu Issachar Back B'Shnas Tov Reish Chav Gimel Leprat Gotten Mifalot Elokim Drak the S back in Lemberg, 1863. So this was done in 1863. Here, this is some of the Rabbi Yitzchak Gershon. These are some of the subjects. This is a mafteach. This is an index to the various subjects that Don Yitzchak Abarvanel, that's how that he talks about. He talks about it in different ma'amorim. Let's take a look here. On Yitzchak Abarvanel. This is his biography. Don Yitzchak Abarvanel. Don Yitzchak Abarvanel, the last of the long line of great personalities of the golden age of Spanish Jewry, was the scion of an illustrious family which traced its ancestry back to King David. He was born in Lisbon in 1437 CE, the son of Don Yehuda, who had come to Portugal's capital from his native Sevilla. When still a young man, Don Yitzchak Abarvanel was called by King Alfonso of Portugal to the royal court and was appointed Minister of Finance. At this time, he had already written his first work, Ateret Zekenim, which is a religious philosophical study on divine providence, and a second book, Surat HaYesodot, in which he endeavors to provide answers to the philosophical problems which occupied his contemporaries. He served with distinction as Minister of Finance of Portugal. His own fortunes flourished also. He built himself a splendid palace where the great of the nation met, nobles, princes, scholars, and statesmen, Gentile and Jew. His high office did not prevent him from writing numerous books of true worth, in which he evolves an original approach to Judaism and the search for the essential meaning of the principles of religious belief. In his commentary on the Tanakh, the biblical scriptures, he follows new concepts of exegesis. Here he could make good use of his wide knowledge of Torah and the Jewish philosophers and commentators, as well as of the Greek and Latin classics, and of his familiarity with the writings of Christian scholars and theologians, and of the literature of the humanists and the Renaissance. He was the first commentator who prefaced his commentary on each biblical book with an introduction, in which he deals with its character as an entity. In his commentaries on the books of Judges and Kings, for example, books with which the exegetes before him had neglected to a certain extent, that was Judges and Kings, that's Shoftim and Melachim. Books which the exegetes before him had neglected to a certain extent, he presents a comprehensive survey of the social, economic, and political conditions in that period. Often he introduces analogies to the milieu of his own age. He contends that the period of Israel's judges was a more democratic and ideal one than that of the kings, for officials elected for limited periods are more likely to be responsive to the needs of the people, while hereditary rule often brings in its wake corruption and decadence. He combines many elements in his commentaries: exegesis, linguistic explanations, a study of the characteristic style of each of the prophets, and analysis of the way of life and the prevalent ideologies and ideals of the people in each period. Several of his books are devoted to the theme of messianic redemption. Here he rebuts Christian exegesis and points up the Jewish road to redemption according to Jewish tradition and as passed down by the sages of the Talmud. In his numerous books, he writes on the basic elements of Judaism, not only from the analytical viewpoint of the scholar, but from the point of view of human morality. His philosophic views are expressed in his commentary on the Moreh Nevuchim of the Rambam and in his book She'elot, printed in Venice in 5334, in which he replies to a questioner, Rabbi Shaul HaKohen of Candia, Crete. He also wrote a commentary on the Mishnaic tractate, the Mishnah tractate Avot, Pirkei Avot, Sayings of the Fathers, entitled Nachalat Avot, and a commentary on the Passover Haggadah, entitled Shavach Pesach, published first in Constantinople in 5265. These works have maintained their popularity to this day. His literary work he combined with fruitful endeavors on behalf of his people. Thus, when the King of Portugal conquered the North African cities, Arzila and Tangier, and took several thousand prisoners, Don Yitzchak Abarvanel helped to raise the sums required for the freeing of the several hundred Jews among the prisoners. In 1483, after a new king had come to the Portuguese throne, who established an absolutist regime and arrested many of the nobles, Don Yitzchak fled Portugal and came to Spain. Here too he soon rose to high office as the treasurer of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. But the days of the Jews in Spain were numbered. Following the fall of Granada, last foothold of the Moors on Spanish soil, the Inquisitor General Torquemada persuaded the king and queen to expel the Jews from Spain. All the efforts of Don Yitzchak Abarvanel were of no avail. In 1492, the Jews left the country where the Jewish communities had flourished for centuries and which owed much of its prosperity, civilization, and culture to its Jewish citizens. Don Yitzchak, with his family and other refugees, found a haven in Naples. Again, he rapidly rose to high rank, but Naples was conquered by the King of France, and another period of wandering began for Don Yitzchak. Finally, he settled in Venice and was appointed ambassador of the city republic to Portugal for the purpose of concluding a commercial treaty between the two powers. During his wanderings, he wrote his 3 books of hope and redemption. Hope and Redemption. Mayanei HaYeshua, a commentary on the book of Daniel. Yeshuat Meshicho, and Mashmiya Yeshua. Each of these books was written with the purpose to exhort and encourage his countrymen, those who profess Judaism openly, as well as the Anusim, the Marranos, that's the hidden Jews, that they were forced to act as Christians. So Don Yitzchak Abarvanel wrote for everybody. He was encouraging for everybody. Each of these books were written with the purpose to exhort and encourage his countrymen, those who profess Judaism openly, as well as the Anusim, the Marranos. He saw the squalor, the poverty, and the suffering which beset his people after the expulsion from Spain. He feared that they might lose heart and cease to believe in the final redemption. And thus he set out, as he described it, to quote, waken them from the sleep of the galut, to the sleep of the diaspora, of the exile, and to show that the days of salvation is not far off, and that they must keep faith and hope. And indeed, Abarvanel himself personifies that period of Jewish history, his rise to the heights of influence, power, and wealth, and his wanderings, therefore, and his wanderings thereafter from country to country typify the glory and the tragedy of Spanish Jewry, whose expulsion from the land in which it had flourished for centuries was likened by some historians to a third exile of the Jewish people. Several of the works of Don Yitzchak Abarvanel enjoyed wide popularity. His Bible commentaries were studied and read not only by Jewish scholars and students, but by Christian scholars as well, and were translated into several European languages. No less than 30 translations of his work were undertaken by non-Jewish scholars. Don Yitzchak Abarvanel passed away in Venice in 5268, 1508 CE, and was buried in the city of Padua. His eventful life as statesman, philosopher, and upright Jew has been the subject of stories and historic plays. So let's see. This is Don Yitzchak Abarvanel. Don Yitzchak Abarvanel. This book is the book Giants of the Spirit. Giants of the Spirit. 20 biographies of outstanding sages and rabbis. And this is by Ephraim Taubenhaus. And this is one of Don Yitzchak Abarvanel's sefarim. This is called Mifalot Elokim. So this is from the work of Don Yitzchak Abarvanel, Mifalot Elokim, printed in Lemberg, 1863. Thank you very much. A good year. Go to